how much protein should I be getting? And this one's, hey, we could answer in many different ways on here as well. You go into Google and you're going to see 0.8 grams per kilogram. Now, what individual are we speaking to here?
Yeah.
What BMI are we speaking to? What health and background and metabolically are we speaking to here as well? So we will try to answer this question as, as wide open as we can, but there is going to be things that we have to ask to get this right, the right answer to you.
Yeah. So I'm going to start off with that with this, like, well, how much protein do we need to survive? Right. I mean, that's kind of like probably the easiest question, and that number is about 25 milligrams per kilogram. Right. So it's not a lot, to be honest with you. I mean, if you're a 70-kilogram gentleman, that's 14 milligrams roughly of protein, if my math is correct there, right? So it's not a huge amount of protein that you really, really need in order to sorry, it's point two, Sam. Sorry, that is it's the 25 milligrams. Sorry. So it's not a lot of protein. That's 14 milligrams. And so it can range up to, a growing child will need it, an adult, in their 80s and 90s or 60s, 70s will need differently from a middle-aged individual too as well. And it also depends on your level of activity too as well, right? How much you're doing it. It also depends on the food you're eating too as well. The quality of food you're eating too as well, right? So if you're eating a lot of plant-based, let's say plant-based, we don't absorb the protein as good. 10 to 16, roughly 15, 16% of plant-based is absorbed, but it's different. It's healthy protein, it's good protein. Whereas if you eat meat, you have a higher absorption rate being incorporated into your body, 20, 25%, depending on the quality. Eggs is actually the best food for incorporation of the protein. So so it depends on the amount of protein you're eating too as well, right? And so that matters too as well. But for the average people, individual, it's 0.7 milligrams per kilogram, to up to 2 milligrams per kilogram for people who are weightlifters, 2.2, 2.5, people who are athletic, athletics and stuff like that. And so it ranges a whole lot too as well, right? And so what's the benefit of eating protein? I mean, I think that's important too as well. And so one of the benefits of eating protein, i.e. probably meat for most people, is the satiety part. Right, it makes us feel more full and satisfied. And so if you eat lean protein, remember, the more protein you eat, the more fat you have, the more saturated fat you're going to have in your blood panels and stuff like that. And so you might eat less other foods, and your hunger might be prolonged. Here's the other thing is that, remember, that number is not static. I don't want people to think, well, I just need 7.7 milligrams per kilogram for the rest of my life, or 1 milligram per kilogram is easy to rest of my life. It changes, right? If you're pregnant, you might want more protein, but if you're in your weight loss journey, and this is important to understand, is you have to adapt your eating style, your macronutrient, to what is it that you're doing, right? And so, for example, I was just a couple of weeks ago, I did the Spartan trifecta, and what I ate predominantly was plant-based protein. I had very little meat, because I don't really need a lot of meat. I need good carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates and stuff like that. And I enjoy plant-based. So I eat very little like meats, and once in a while, a couple of pieces here and there. But predominantly my protein came from legumes and stuff like that, right? So, but if I was perhaps wanted to build muscle, I wanted to trim, I want to be lighter so I can move a little faster, expend less energy. But if I wanted to do resistance training, I want to eat more protein. It's important. Now, protein is very important, particularly in the older population, your 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th decade of life. And the reason is you want to maintain your muscle mass as much as possible. So we do know that your resting metabolic rate is proportional to your skeletal muscle mass. All right. And so that's important to know. So if you are an individual who have more musculoskeletal mass, you're going to need, you can eat more calories before you convert it to storage fat, right? So if you're an older individual and you're doing resistance training, you want to probably eat a little bit more protein, right? To give you that kind of muscle rebuilding opportunity as much as possible. How much? That depends, because remember, the more protein you eat, the more saturated fat, and what kind of proteins do you eat as well, right? And so when you eat high proteins, you want to eat a little more lower carbohydrate to balance that out. Typically, is what I say. And so you eat high protein, eating more vegetables, the low carb, high protein. And as one of the Scandinavian countries actually adopted this low carb, high protein recommendation for their population too, as well. Right? I can't remember which country, to be honest. But as you get older, you want to have more protein. So how much protein you need depends on how much activity you're doing. What's the purpose of your activities?